Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Before I introduce myself, just want to point out beehiiv is spelled Beehiiv. So, if you're going to use that as a code, you're going to want to spell it the way the company spells their name, not the way that a bee would spell their hive, I guess. Um, so I'm Avi. I've been in the creator economy for about 15 years on the business side. Was one of the first talent agents in the space at a major agency at WME, representing YouTube stars in the early days of YouTube, Vine stars, if that helps date me a little bit, and a number of others. And since then, I've done everything from influencer marketing to building a production company for podcasts and YouTube channels to leading the creator partnerships team at Patreon. Um, Now I write about the creator economy on LinkedIn, as well as my newsletter, Creator Logic, which is on beehiiv and operated by the Future Party, our two guest companies today. So excited to introduce Boye, Tyler, and Eldon. Boye is the CEO of the Future Party. Tyler is the CEO of beehiiv. Eldon is the creator lead at beehiiv. And I will let them each tell you more about themselves before we jump into the panel. So Boye, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Avi. It's a pleasure to be here today to connect with everyone. I met Avi way back in the day, also at William Morris Endeavor. I actually remember our very first lunch, and we've been friends ever since. We have a newsletter that goes out to several hundred thousand people Monday through Friday about the business of culture. It's really cool, and we use it as a flywheel to create other types of content from podcasts to events, and we build newsletters for creators and companies. And I love beehiiv, so I will kick it to Eldon to introduce himself.
Awesome. Thank you, Boye. Our liquor store beeping has stopped, so I'm assuming everyone is coming in. Great to meet everyone. My name is Eldon. I am the creator lead here at beehiiv, which means, I work with hundreds of creators and helping them start a newsletter, everything from promo strategy to, how it fits into the rest of your content to, how to get set up and start growing and monetizing a newsletter. Funny fact, I was actually a creator, but that's an embarrassing story for another time. But yeah, really excited about beehiiv. I think it's a huge opportunity for a lot of creators, and we're excited to share the inside tips and tricks. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our evangelist, Tyler Dank, CEO at beehiiv.
Cool. I guess we are the meat and potatoes of this. But what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining. I'm Tyler, CEO, co-founder of beehiiv. Previously was the second employee at Morning Brew and helped build out that tech ecosystem leading up to their acquisition by Business Insider, and then launched beehiiv about two and a half years ago. Super focused on serving users however we can, helping them grow, helping them expand, helping them monetize their email newsletter, and making it as simple as possible to do that. So super excited to dive in, share some insights, and provide as much value as we can.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. As I ask this first question, I would actually love for everyone in the audience right now to participate by quickly just typing into the chat. Are you a video, audio, written, or photo artist, visual, or music? Like, what kind of creator are you, and what's your primary platform? And the reason I want to know, I want to get an understanding of who is out there today and paying attention to this. When most people hear creator these days, I think a lot of people think about video, right? Like YouTube or um, uh, TikTok. They might think of audio, of podcasting. Um, where do newsletters fit into the creator economy? How do they fit into the creator economy? I'm going to start with Eldon because you're the creator lead at beehiiv, so you kind of sit at the intersection.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think traditionally, newsletters used to sit at more of the B2B kind of Twitter blog post creators, and that's if they're called creators, but more so called bloggers. But I think, in recent years, we've had really a resurgence of newsletters and, with everything going on with social media algorithms, we really find that a lot of content creators, video, audio, music, are starting to want to own their audience, own maybe more of the distribution with, their followers, subscribers. So I think it's really opened up a door for more people to start using email, a written format, and also shameless plug, but Beehive makes it super easy. So, we try to make everything possible, even if you don't know much about newsletters or blogging. Um, so we're at like a really interesting time in the creator economy where we're seeing a huge influx of everyone starting to pile in. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure Tyler also has some thoughts there.
Yeah, as far as like the value provided, I think I'm gonna hit on a few things. There is the own your audience, own your distribution that has been emphasized a bit more with what's going on with TikTok and other platforms. So I think I mean, I launched my own newsletter, shout out Big Desk Energy 4 months ago, but like even just having a direct relationship with 25,000 people where I can create content, get directly in front of their inbox, drive them. We just launched like an event last week. It's like really interesting and really powerful. I think something that is fairly new to email and newsletter at new in terms of like accessibility is monetization. Brands have a ton of success being able to advertise via email. There's like metrics around how much more effective email is than social media advertising. And so as more and more brands are open up to being able to find niche audiences and targeting those audiences within email and newsletters, they are looking for newsletters to sponsor and get in front of. And so that has just opened the door for monetization for a lot of content creators, which I think is super exciting. And I also think email opens the door to a lot of different types of monetization. So I just mentioned ads, but premium subscriptions, which Patreon, OnlyFans, Substack, like just owning your audience and being able to charge them directly is an interesting monetization stream. And then, as I mentioned, events, affiliate, community. There's just so many ways to leverage email as a top of funnel and push people down into whatever would serve them best and whatever you are willing to provide in terms of value. So yeah, that loosely answered your question, but overall, I think it's like very dynamic and like what creators are fit for email, as long as you can think about the value that you can provide and who you're trying to serve.
That's
I think
interesting. Oh, go
I
ahead,
think
boy.
what Tyler pointed out is really important, which is a flywheel, right? He mentioned all of these different ways to monetize, and at its center is the newsletter. And I personally believe the newsletter will become as ubiquitous as having a Facebook account or an Instagram account in the future, where everyone will have one, whether you have 100 subscribers and you're a random teacher in some high school and you're sending it to your students, or you are a big creator. And it really feeds into everything else. You own your audience, it's private, but you can leverage it to monetize other aspects of your own personal economy.
Got it. That's interesting. So first off, I think this audience right now that we've got here are largely already newsletter writers, which is a little different than I expected. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack than maybe some of the questions I was initially going to ask here. So keeping all of our panelists on our toes. Um, I think I'm curious how people who don't necessarily come from the writing side of the aisle, right? So we're talking about how everyone is going to have a newsletter eventually. I don't actually necessarily disagree with that, right? It's a great way to convey ideas. It's a great way to quote unquote own the audience, right? Um, the flip side is like it's another thing to program. It's another, you have to write more content. You have to come up with something to say. It has to be good enough that your audience cares. How how can creators kind of who are doing other things add newsletters to their content mix without burning out and while maintaining the level of quality that their fans expect from their other content? Or are there other things they could be doing? Like, I guess, are there some strategies here that you would recommend creators who may not come from the newsletter side take, or who may come from other types of written content like Twitter or LinkedIn, for example?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think you actually called out a pretty good point. I would say like the barriers to entry or like friction of creating a newsletter is higher than recording like a 30-second like selfie video and editing it for a few minutes and putting it on like a TikTok or Instagram. I think that is something we've learned in the early days of our talent and creator initiative is those who are amazing at short form video don't always translate one-to-one to creating like long form written content. It is like a different medium. And like speaking for myself, like I carve out 3 to 4 hours a week to write it. It's not like the most seamless thing. I put like a lot of time and effort into it. So I think it is actually self-selecting a certain type of content creator that wants to expand into long form written content or figuring out creative ways to do short form. So like Sean Perry, for example, has a massive newsletter and he just takes the 5 best things that he found on Twitter that week and synthesizes that with like his own commentary. So I also think there's not a one-to-one of it has to be a long form blog post or like pure journalism. Like you can get creative with email and how you want to communicate with your audience and the value that you're providing. But I think there is like a caveat, like it may not be for everyone, and there's different ways to figure out where you fit into like the value you are providing. Another one is like partnering with agencies. So that has been pretty popular. Boye can probably talk about that as well. And you've already led with how you work with Boye and his team. But if you work with one of these writing agencies, whether it's ghostwriting or a partnership or talent agency that can help build a content strategy around what you were trying to convey, there's like a lot of those popping up and those have been pretty popular recently. So whether you do it yourself or hire someone, there's like a lot of different opportunities available in market.
Yeah,
I
boy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alvin.
just one quick thing I wanted to add. I've worked with hundreds of creators now at this point. Not all, most of them have been video content creators. A lot of them are not going to sit down and maybe write for 6 hours. So, I mean, Tyler mentioned a good point. There is some misconception with like it has to be some 5-page blog essay where, you are writing like a very detailed deep dive, which is fine. Some people do that, and that's very valuable educational content. But again, like Sean Perry, it doesn't have to be the Sean Perry example. It doesn't have to be this long form content. And in addition to that, the way I've worked with a lot of creators is creating them very easy to use templates. So creating a beautiful design and then having their sections that they can just go out and fill out easily every week. And, like when you're writing about something maybe you're more passionate about than trying to get the most likes or views on the algorithm, you're able to kind of spend more time and it's more enjoyable and it's less of a chore than, writing out that content that's 5 pages and a blog. And, I always, last thing, but I always recommend creators not start in an overwhelming manner. So like weekly, bi-weekly is a great place to start. For example, Arnold Schwarzenegger started a weekly newsletter on beehiiv, and then, trends like as they started getting the content fit, they got feedback from the audience, they figured out what works, what doesn't. They're able to go to 2 times a week, then 3 times a week, and now it's a daily newsletter that goes out to almost 1 million people. So it's just figuring out what works for you and what you enjoy doing at the same time to avoid burnout.
We can't forget AI as well, the large elephant in the room, but there's a world where you can still write original content and leverage AI to be a support system. And platforms like beehiiv actually have AI built in, where here's like a use case. You are a podcaster, that's your creative medium. You transcribe your content using a software, then you throw that in beehiiv and leverage AI to summarize your content into 5 bullet points for that episode, right? You can do things like that to help save you time along with everything everyone else has said too.
That's interesting. Do you think there's going to be a differentiation or a stratification among newsletters that are more and less heavily AI driven?
That's a great question. I think it's hard to answer. I think it'll be a similar answer to how everyone reacts to AI on other mediums, right? Like social media and video. And I think we're just in the early phases of it. And, how we approach it is we just leverage it as a tool. So we haven't quite gone to the point of like leveraging AI to write our entire newsletter. I think a big portion of that is the audience may not react really well. We might remember the Sports Illustrated sort of fiasco where, all hell broke loose when it was discovered that they wrote their articles with AI. There could be a world in 5 years where everyone does, right? But we leverage it as a time saver. So we do original curation, and we do that actually with a lot of our clients. And so we might take an article and summarize it much quicker than the amount of time it would take to read it, and then repurpose that and leverage that to take the high level points and create our original content. But yeah, it's a really profound question that I can't really say one way or the other. I'd be curious, Eldon or Tyler's thoughts.
Yeah, I think we're early in seeing like songs and videos and probably eventually movies in the next 2, 3 years that are also mostly AI generated, as are emails and other content that we read. I think it depends on what is trying to be communicated. Like, for example, I think aggregating news on crypto, finance, business, like aggregation type newsletters, I can see leveraging AI to just get aggregated. And I think if I'm the consumer of that and I'm getting the 5 most interesting things that happen in finance or business or crypto or sports, if it serves the purpose of me being the reader, like I'm totally fine and probably could care less whether it's a human or AI. If it is, just going back to the Sean Puri example, like I respect him as a content creator and I'm curious what he is interested in. So his actual curation is meaningful to me. Like the more you lean into the creator and like their personality, like you can extract value from the human work of his curation. And then I'd say, even from just like speaking from my own experience of creating Big Desk Energy, like that is me sharing stories about building beehiiv, fundraising, hiring, like my lived experiences that I would find in AI difficult to replace, like my lived experiences in telling my own stories. So I think it depends. Like there's a lot of different types of content. There's pure information, there's aggregation, there's opinion, there's like deep journalism, and there's just like stories and narratives. There's probably some overlap between the 5 I just spit out. I didn't think about that before saying it, but point being, depending on what you're signing up for and what the writer's actually trying to do, I think there's a place where AI would actually assist in that and help a lot, and the end reader probably does not care whatsoever. And then there's others where you're following or reading because you care about the person, their story, their experiences. And I think that's obviously the harder thing to replace.
That's interesting. So it's the framework there is almost like if it's more about the specific information, then it's less important whether it's human made or AI. Whereas if it's more about the experiences or the voice, then it's more important that it's human made rather than AI. Fair
Yeah,
assessment.
I think so. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the different newsletters that I read on a day-to-day basis. Like a lot of them are just like what happened in the world in sports, politics, business, and whether it is a human doing that because I trusted their curation and they add their like 2 cents and their insights. Like that's probably why I signed up, like using Morning Brew as an example. They could aggregate the news from AI. I'd be surprised if they didn't say like what are the 5 most important things that happened, just to give them an idea of what they could be writing about. But it's like their commentary and writing style that pulls me to that newsletter. And
Yeah,
then others.
I was just going to chime in. Daniel O'Connor just put in the chat that trust is a key variable. And as Tyler was talking, like that's what I was immediately thinking is at the end of the day, when you kind of gave those 2 scenarios or you summarized those 2 scenarios, Avi, I think on the analysis side, right? So like some popular newsletters might be stratechery or not boring in this sort of analysis. It's from a person. I think people go to those because they trust that it is an individual that they care about and it is a human being. And maybe they would go to it if they knew it was an AI, but I think to betray that trust is probably where you would have problems.
Right. It's like it's opinion or it's subjective versus objective. If it's just facts and information, then it doesn't really matter how it was written. It's conveying information. But if it's subjective
I think
interpretation,
it's storytelling and analysis, right? Like Ben Thompson's a great example, like Stratechery. Like AI is not going to replace for Stratechery. It could try to say like, hey, Google released their earnings. What do you think? You train like an AI to like try to convey that in like an interesting tone. But like I think Ben Thompson, who's been covering the industry for 10, 15 years, has such interesting insights. Like I pay him $12 a month because I'm curious what Ben thinks, not what like an AI would synthesize. So I think that's like where the value comes from. But again, that's also one end of the spectrum of such incredibly deep dives and analysis. Like he has carved out that niche so well. And I think that is a difficult thing to do, but that's like I guess what all writers are ultimately trying to do, unless you're aggregating content, which still serves value as well. Like building your own voice and having a group of followers that trust you and are interested in what you have to say is ultimately what writing is and why people seek out content to read. So finding your voice and building trust, I think, is like the key components.
awesome. I'm going to close the loop on the AI piece real quick. Someone left a comment here. Alex C left a comment that AI created content will be like AirPods, a novelty that people make fun of and resist at first, and becomes ubiquitous in the norm in 2 to 3 years. I think there's definitely something to be said about that. I will also say that there are billions and billions of dollars of headphones that are not AirPods sold every year because people like me value sound quality over uh, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not ubiquity, but convenience, right? AirPods are the most convenient, the standard, the norm, but they don't have the best sound quality. So there's something to be said about human made versus machine made in the same way. Just in the same way that, the industrial age brought in a differentiation between factory made and handmade. All right, cool. Let's talk a little bit more tactically. Somebody earlier asked, I don't have a problem figuring out what to write about. I have a problem getting people to read it or finding people that will read it. So, what are the most effective ways to grow as a newsletter writer? Boya, you want to talk about this? You've got a gigantic newsletter.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot of different ways. Interestingly enough, there is now really sort of an established playbook for people to grow, and I'll lay it down. The one thing that I'll say before laying it down is right now, at least for us, it feels like there's always a quest of how can we find new ways to grow. So I would challenge everyone, regardless of what you hear today, like find your own unique way to grow that maybe no one else is on right now. I would probably split the two different ways to grow as high quality growth and low quality growth. And the unfortunate thing is the high quality growth is usually slower and the low quality growth is usually faster. There's some edge cases. um, Organic is probably the best thing you can do. You are a creator who already has an established medium somewhere else, and you are converting your audience to the newsletter, whether it's a podcast, whether you're on LinkedIn or Twitter or TikTok. That's how you do it. I've actually been pretty impressed with Tyler himself, who is a creator and has grown Big Desk Energy to what, like 15,000, 10 to 15,000 people, 20,000 people.
The disrespect, 25, but yeah.
25,000 people, mainly by posting on Twitter and his various social channels. So like definitely subscribe to Big Desk Energy, and it's a master class on how to do it. There's paid, right? You can always do paid social and paid like on TikTok and Facebook. That, in my opinion, is the dirty little secret, from like the morning brews and the hustles. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month to grow. It's not just organic, and you don't have to do that right away. In fact, I would argue to say like get a foundation first, but don't be nervous to turn on paid. It's a very okay thing to do and a great way to find your audience. And done right, you're only spending $1, $2, $3 to grow, and ideally you're monetizing, so you're making that back up. And I meant $1, $2, $3 per subscriber. You can do cross promotion. So similar in the podcast world, there's this idea that you can find your audience where they already want to be, right? So if someone likes the medium of newsletters, there's a more of a chance that they will like your newsletters because they read newsletters, right? So you can do cross promotions with people of a similar size, bigger or smaller, and work out unique deals. There's really cool tools that allow you to do that. Again, like a Beehiiv Boosts, that's built in to your actual email newsletter platform, where yes, you can email and do something more analog, or you could look at a marketplace and just quickly ping people and have it be automated, which is really cool. The last one I'll leave with you is competitions, giveaways, and sweepstakes. You can do that on your own, leveraging like your referral program, something like, hey, if the first 100 people to subscribe, today will get a chance to win, the Apple AirPods, because we know those are the best headphones, right? Or the first 1,000 people in this given week will be entered to or who refer a new subscriber will get the chance to win, Apple AirPod Maxes, which are also superior to obvious headphones. So those are some ideas on how you can grow.
That's factually inaccurate, but I see your point. One interesting I guess follow-up question I had to that. Newsletters are maybe the only creator medium I can think of where it is a standard practice to pay for growth. Why is that? Like why like YouTubers don't pay for subs, and I don't think many podcasters pay for subs. Certainly not Instagrammers or TikTokers, but newsletters do. It's totally normal. I have, and you have, and Morning Brew does, and everyone else. Why is that? Like, what about the media makes that a norm?
Great question. Tyler, go for it.
Yeah, a great question. I've never really thought about it like that. I think there could be a case to be made for the money that is in newsletters, where you can almost back into like the cost per subscriber. So if you're going the premium subscription route and you know your funnel, 1 in 10 readers upgrade to your $10 a month subscription, then you can actually back into like the cost that you're willing to pay to acquire a subscriber, right? So if you can acquire a subscriber for $1, takes $10 to get one that will convert to a subscriber that's paying you $10, then you're break even. And if you can beat $1, then you're in the black. Like there's like mathematical equations where it's like a little bit more of a black box on YouTube. Granted, I'm not a YouTube creator whatsoever, but it's like you put up videos. If you're large enough, you might get ad placements. What's your take rate on the ad placements? What's a subscriber worth? Does subscribers actually convert to views? Like it's a little bit more of an obfuscated funnel, so it's a little bit harder. Podcasts are also like pretty tough with attribution. And like to get the numbers to back in, like you're talking tons and tons of downloads to get into like a CPM. And I'm also not as familiar with the podcast game. I just know that it's a struggle with attribution. I think emails, whether it's the norm from like Morning Brew, Hustle, some of the other large newsletters, like there is a playbook that Boye described, and there's a way to understand the value of a subscriber. And if you can get advertisements, sponsorships, affiliate, or premium subscriptions, like there is a more concrete funnel of like how much you are confident in paying is one. There's also other growth tactics too. So the referral programs, like something classic that Morning Brew did really well that we built into Beehiiv as well. But similar equation, if 1 in every 10 subscribers that you get will actually go on to refer another subscriber, like you actually have more confidence paying for a subscriber, knowing that 1 in every how many will refer 5 new friends to join if you do a good job of writing good content and enticing them to refer other people. So there's both, if you do it right, the promise and calculation of future payments and revenue from one of like the 10 different ways you can monetize an email newsletter. And then there's also a bunch of growth mechanisms built into the medium itself, where you could have 1 subscriber turn into 7 subscribers over time if done correctly. So that's like my first jab at why I think that might be the case. But yeah.
I think also, email lists are so versatile. You can actually take them wherever you want with you. So like if one day you don't like a certain platform, you can take it to another platform. Can't do that on YouTube, can't do that on Instagram,
Right.
definitely can't do that on TikTok. So it's one thing to think about. And I think it just adds like a huge value play. Like Tyler mentioned, the analytics you can see, if you can see, I'm paying $2 per subscriber, but over the course of 4 months, their lifetime value to me is going to be $25, either as a free subscriber or premium. You kind of backtrace that and be like, okay, I'm willing to pay $2 or $3 from high quality sources to grow this list faster because it is such a lucrative opportunity. Like even through our ad network or bringing sponsors to the newsletter, you can monetize basically from day one. So it just makes sense to, grow your list as fast as you can, especially if you know how much you're going to make per subscriber.
Yeah, I've seen some newsletter creators talk about how they have been able to basically create cash flow positive flywheels where they buy subs, but then because of boosts or some equivalent product, um, each new sub then subscribes to some other newsletters as well. They get paid for those other newsletter subscriptions, and that actually covers the cost of the new sub. And so they're like making money as they grow, which you can't really do with YouTube or TikTok. Um, but this all then goes to monetization as well, right? Because in order for it to be worth paying for a follower, that follower you have to know is going to generate X number of dollars. I think, Tyler, to your point, it's pretty hard to predict the value of a individual Instagram subscriber, for example. Um, so what are the different ways that a newsletter can actually monetize? Obviously, there's, the Substack kind of subscription model. I know Beehive has its own subscription product as well, but um, outside of subscription, what are all the other ways that newsletters can monetize?
Yeah, I think at least built into the product, there's two other ones that come to mind, and then there's like the world of possibilities beyond that. Also, sorry if it's getting dark in here. I'm in a Airbnb with terrible lighting in Spain, and it's dark outside. So hopefully you can still see me. But yeah, so premium subscriptions is the first one. You like as you mentioned, Patreon, Substack, they offer the ability to monetize your audience directly. You can charge a monthly $10 a month, $100 a year, name your price, whatever. Worth noting, beehiiv doesn't take a cut of subscription revenue, unlike other companies mentioned in this webinar. So what you charge is what you get from your readers on beehiiv's premium subscription product. The one that excites me a lot is we have an ad network. And so I think we've mentioned it quite a few times, but Morning Brew did, I don't know how much money they're doing now. At the time when I was there, 20 million plus a year. That's an ad-based newsletter, which means a company comes to Morning Brew, says, I will pay you $50,000 to put your logo at the top and copy about the product that they are monetizing. So they basically just do a premium sponsorship where the newsletter promotes the brand and has copy with a call to action to go to that brand's website. It's a monetization stream as old as the internet with ads and placements and whatnot. The downside of that historically is when I was there, at least Morning Brew had 20 plus people in brand partnerships. You have to understand who your audience is. You have to be able to go to MasterCard and say, our audience is 55% male, 45% female, household income 200,000, open rate engagement. Like you have to really understand who your audience is, and that is effort, and then you have to sell the brands. So long way of saying what we did at beehiiv is we launched our own ad network. We're sending over 1 billion emails a month. We work with brands like HubSpot, Monday.com, Netflix, Betterment. Basically, we give those opportunities to our content creators where you don't have to know sales or your audience. Like we know your audience. And so if Boye has a newsletter on beehiiv, we can say, Netflix is willing to pay you $2.50 per click. Do you want to run a Netflix ad in your newsletter? Boye says yes. He drops in his newsletter. He doesn't have to, but it's optional. And we will pay him the next month for the performance of that ad. So it's basically having a sales team internally with you. So that is ads. You can do that yourself, as I mentioned. Like we have plenty of newsletters on beehiiv that have their own sales team or work with third-party agencies. The idea is the same. It's a brand sponsoring and paying your newsletter to promote it. And then the third, which is really exciting, is what we call Boost. So there's like, as Boye alluded to as well, there's something like co-registration that's been around for emails and signups and any website really for a while, where you sign up to one thing and you can recommend others. We created a Boost network where Big Desk Energy, to use an example, I can recommend Boye's newsletter and Eldon's newsletter, and they could pay me $1, $2, $3 for those leads. So when someone signs up to my newsletter, they see I also recommend Boye. If they sign up to Boye's from my login or my sign up form, then Boye pays me $3. That actually, why that is so interesting is I saw a comment earlier in the chat, and like the common question we would always receive when I was at Morning Brew was, how big do I have to be before I can start monetizing? And it used to be, oh, you need like probably 10 to 15,000 subscribers before a brand will even look at you. Now with Boost, we've kind of solved the cold start problem where day one, you can have 2 subscribers. You can launch Boost and you will get paid $2, $3 per lead for everyone that signs up and signs up to other newsletters. So you can be cash flow positive day one. And a lot of our newsletters are. So that's like what's built into the platform: summarize, subscriptions, ads, and Boost. And then like the other curveball is like anything else that you want to drive traffic to. So if you have a paid community, if you want to host events, if you want to do whatever, you can use newsletters as the top of funnel. I mean, I promise this isn't sponsored by Big Desk Energy, but this is like the reason I launched my newsletter, so I could like be the creator and like go through the process of like scaling it and understand what the pain points are and how to grow it. But I just launched like a mastermind event this week where we're hosting an event for 8 people in Costa Rica. It's not ads, it's not sponsorships, but people are paying or applying to pay to go to this. So like that is a kind of the power of like top of funnel and like how creative you can be with monetizing a newsletter.
I'll also add like 2 other things on the world of possibilities. One being affiliate links. So, a lot of fashion creators or people who you'll see like people posting best Costco finds of the week. We actually just, the deal guy who has 2 million subscribers on YouTube just launched a newsletter on beehiiv, but he basically will drop in a ton of links. He gets paid every time someone purchases a product from the link, similar to like Amazon affiliates, but you can work with certain brands in your niche. Or even like Amazon or larger brands that have affiliate programs set up where you can monetize from the links you're actually sharing if it fits into your niche. And then addition to that, I think fitting into the creator economy, there is a trend of creator-led products that are going very successful. So you can think of Logan Paul and Prime, Logan Paul and KCI and Prime, Emma Chamberlain and Emma Chamberlain's Coffee. But basically, a lot of creators are using platforms like newsletters as a launch pad for their future product because creator-led products like, cookbooks or recipe books are working so well. It's like a way to inform your audience, one, that you're starting this, but also get feedback before it's officially launched. So what a lot of creators do is, they'll show previews, they'll use surveys or polls to get feedback and then map that automatically to the customer's email. And then you're able to send them, targeted emails when the product does go live. And you're able to create these segments and, really dive deeper into what makes a good product and what your audience really wants.
I just wanted to chime in super quick because Eldon and Tyler basically summed up most of the ways you can make revenue. But I want to call out something, which is timing. It's a byproduct of Avi's question earlier about how come newsletters are such an acceptable medium to just spend on growth. And it really comes down to knowing your payback period, to knowing how quickly you will make revenue based on what you spent to grow. And I'm currently fascinated by newsletters that are making revenue the moment you subscribe. Boosts, the feature that we've all talked about, is an awesome, easy way that anyone here can literally turn on tomorrow. But I'm also starting to see innovative ways that people can do that. One example, there's a newsletter called The Assist. They actually don't use boosts or similar tools. When you go and you subscribe, you'll get a survey questionnaire. It asks you 5 productivity questions. After that reveal, you will land on a page and you will get 5 productivity tools. It could be how they use like their template in Miro or a Notion type platform, and they make $20, $30, $50 on conversions. And that's before you've even read a newsletter. And so I always encourage people to really think outside the box and leverage your growth as a revenue stream as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that for Creator Logic. That's a great idea. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. Like YouTube, you have to have whatever 1,000 subs or 10,000 view hours or something in order to even start monetizing. Um, and there's no direct monetization on, not really anyway, on Instagram and TikTok, and you know, podcasts, you have to have a certain number of downloads per episode to even get an ad network interested in selling for you. So, I have, I don't know, just under 10,000 newsletter subs. I made $500 last week on boosts. Like, it's not like a huge amount of money, but it's not zero. And with like, tell me someone who has 10,000, I don't know, TikTok followers making $500 a week, because they don't exist. So I think it's an interesting point. I want to get to some of these audience questions. So, folks, if y'all have questions, drop them in the chat. I think I saw a question about sort of people who are pre-monetization early stage. I think we just talked about how there's no such thing. You could start monetizing right now. Chris Giles is asking, any advice on cleaning subscriber lists to get rid of old dead subscriptions and other ways to optimize newsletter performance?
Yeah, we have a few tutorials on that I can dig up, or maybe someone on our team that's in here could dig it up pretty quickly. But you can set up an automation. beehiiv has like a full automation suite. So you can just say there's like an inactivity trigger. So if they haven't opened or clicked, and you can set the amount of days or weeks. So like depends on whether you're sending daily or weekly or monthly. But if they haven't opened one of your past 45, 50 emails, pretty safe to say they aren't highly engaged. So you set it to 60 days. You send an email to them saying, hey, you haven't opened. Do you want to remain on the list? If so, click here. And then you set up a step that says if they didn't click on that link, remove them. And that goes on like autopilot. You set it up once, it runs automatically daily. So the tutorial will help with that. But yeah, definitely a best practice.
From Terry H. So many are, sorry, Boy, did you have a second response to
I
that?
was going to say cleaning is important. It really is. It can affect so much that you might not even understand. So just do it, like Nike says.
Awesome. Terry H asks, so many are drowning and overwhelmed with emails. Thoughts on monthly newsletters as opposed to weekly or daily? Can it be successful? How to make it successful? Anyone have thoughts there?
I think it boils down to your value prop, right? Like if I get like 40 newsletters to my inbox, but there are the 10 that I always make sure I try to read every single week. And there's like the 10 that I try to if I have time, and then there's the 10 that I ultimately ignore. Sorry to those writers, but it's like if you know your niche audience and you know what they want, and you can use surveys and polls to kind of figure that out. But if you're providing the valuable content and you're A/B testing your subject lines, it's really not too difficult to keep getting to the primary inbox, and people are actually wanting to view your content, read your content. Those are my two takeaways that I've kind of learned. It's inevitable. People will unsubscribe, but it's continuing that growth loop and making sure you're continuously getting more people than people are unsubscribing.
Yeah, you have to create undeniable value, whatever that is. If you want people to stick around, you create undeniable value. I just want to throw out something that everyone here can steal that I saw tweeted the other day. And it was an idea to create a newsletter where you actually tell people if you don't read every single day, you will be unsubscribed. And there was a certain amount of people that can ever get the newsletter at one time. So it's capped. And automatically that creates FOMO. I haven't seen it like done in the wild, but I love that sort of mechanism to fight through staying on top of a sea of newsletters by saying like, you literally like only, it's like a membership club, right? And you will be taken off if you don't participate. And I just thought that was really cool.
Awesome. Other questions? Daniel O'Connor asks, curious on B2B versus B2C growth strategies, specifically for beehiiv, but I think in general for newsletters. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, B2B is harder typically. It's like, but more valuable audience, right? So there's a lot of people on beehiiv that have B2B focused newsletters that might only have 5, 6, 7,000 subscribers, but are running laps on monetization of like newsletters 5x the size that are more consumer focused. Because there's so many more opportunities in being able to own a niche and an audience and sell into that audience, whether it's the space industry or human resources or whatever. There's like events, there's add-ons, there's courses. Courses is also something we didn't talk about, but like a pretty common monetization stream for a lot of content creators that stem from top of funnel newsletters. I think the best strategy for B2B is really just knowing who your audience is and where they hang out. Is it certain types of events? Is it certain subreddits? Is it certain businesses that you need to get in front of and building partnerships? But also not an expert. I've never grown a B2B newsletter. I've just watched a lot of users on the platform scale them. Typically, you go into B2B content if you really understand the industry and the person that you are serving or like the target audience. So ideally, those people know where to acquire those readers. But if you're debating starting a B2B newsletter, I think that's a good place to start before actually starting, is like thinking through the acquisition strategy.
I think also to add to that, Daniel, I also haven't grown a B2B business, but from what I've seen a lot of creators doing on beehiiv from our bird's eye point of view is getting very niche. So instead of, for example, being for marketers, you start getting more niche. So you go growth marketers, and then you go even more niche. So growth marketers in tech. Now you have a very unique kind of ICP that you'll be able to find where they're visiting and more of the content that they're interested in. So maybe growth marketers want to see SEO and paid media more than, a general purpose marketer that it doesn't feel like the newsletter is specifically for them.
Awesome.
That's helpful. Can I just add one more point on that? Eldon and Tyler, appreciate it. Awesome presentation today. I'm curious if you all have tried to like sell, maybe if there was a startup in the Bay Area or what have you that like wanted their own specific new newsletter to stay in front of their customers, where it's like not necessarily trying to sell them on something, but it wasn't like from a specific person, but it was from a company, like from a brand, if you had experience with that.
Yeah, I gave a whole presentation actually. I'm sorry, I don't know why I act like I didn't know what I was talking about, but I gave a presentation like the B2B newsletter strategy, and like there's a lot of companies that do it super well that were their end goal isn't to monetize with subscriptions or ads. So for an example, a lot of it's just like lead gen or nurturing a lead for like their core product, which might have nothing to do with content. There's a few companies that do it really well. One would be like The Hustle, who got acquired by HubSpot, right? Like they don't do ads for other companies, or they actually may just have started. But what they are doing is building the trust and the voice of following like tech news, because the people who read The Hustle are also likely to work at a company who might use HubSpot. And it really is like the longest sales funnel of just getting you to trust The Hustle's writing and resource. And they hit your inbox every day, 5 days a week. And they throw in ads for HubSpot. So that is HubSpot's acquisition strategy via content. So again, they're not trying to monetize with like an ad or premium subscription. They're just getting you familiar and driving sales down funnel. Brex has a newsletter, like a community-driven newsletter on beehiiv. So again, like they aren't monetizing it. It's like showing that they value the startup community via content and highlighting events and different community things, with the hope that you build trust and eventually sign up to use a Brex card. And then I'd also say even like what Robinhood is doing with Sherwood is really interesting. Their Robinhood Snacks, or like Now Snacks newsletter, is a daily newsletter Monday through Friday about like markets and business news. And they also, I don't believe, are monetizing, but it is a top of funnel acquisition strategy to have you thinking about Robinhood favorably, or just the markets. And if you see a story that you like about, AMC just did this, like your natural reaction is to open your Robinhood app, and they're the ones like kind of giving you that trigger. So that's like a acquisition and usage strategy. So kind of like a lot really quickly, but like different ways for like lead gen, top of funnel, brand awareness, or like user behavior, where you can use content and emails as a way to do something beyond just monetizing the newsletter asset itself.
So I want to get to one last question, maybe two. One interesting one I saw: any best practices on event invitations in emails? Better to use a third-party tool, use a poll or survey feature? Like, what kind of have you seen people do this well?
I A lot of event platforms have things built in. I will say what we do after the event is, this happened around COVID, where, because we do a lot of events, virtual and otherwise, we just said, hey, if you come to a future party event, you're just going to be thrown on the newsletter. So what we've done to date is we use said third parties ecosystem, call it Splash or Partiful or Eventbrite. When we collect those emails, we then send a welcome email, sometimes automated, sometimes manual, from beehiiv, and we say, welcome to the Future Party newsletter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to unsubscribe, cool. Otherwise, you're not going to get the newsletter. And that's how we leverage it.
Yeah, I did an event promoted through the newsletter for Creator Logic last winter, and I used Partiful as the ticketing, if you will, platform. And actually, it was a great way to bridge the gap between my social audience, as well as like the brands that I partner with to sponsor the event, and the newsletter, because I could promote the event through the newsletter, but also through LinkedIn, and also through the various brands LinkedIn. And to your point, boy, everyone that RSVP'd, I then threw them on the newsletter at the end, and so I got another 200 subscribers, right off of the event, new subscribers, which was pretty great. So third party, I would say, is probably the best way to do it. I think
Avi, there was a question about spending some time on those who are in the pre-monetization early stage. I'd be more curious what sort of questions those people have.
Yeah, I think let's finish with that. I don't know that there are specific questions.
While we wait for the question, Avi, I can like give like a quick kind of 0 to 100 and then 0 to 1000. I think those are the two big milestones you have to hit. There's a few ways to do this, right? Like if you're a niche, let's say you're a knitting newsletter, for example. I don't know why I chose knitting, but you can find communities on Reddit, Quora, answer questions there. It's like providing value. Again, like the whole thing is you got to get a little hacky to get your first 100 and to get your first 1000. Once you get to that level, I think you're at a place where you can start using a lot of the growth tools, and you might be making money from the newsletter, so you're able to spend a little more money. But 0 to 100, like you need to find your community and where they hang out, like Tyler mentioned. So if it's a knitting community, you go search on Google. Maybe people are asking questions on Quora, find the latest, try to drop in, try to plug yourself in places like that. Reddit communities are great for that. But allowing yourself to be in more places and just drop in more information in other places where your community might visit is the key step into getting 0 to 100. At the same time, setting up recommendations, maybe in beehiiv, working on a referral program. So if you invite in your welcome email, you can set up a referral program where when someone does subscribe, if they invite another user, they get rewarded with maybe a PDF, a guide, something like that. That's just done on autopilot for you. So those are like quick. I tried to do it quick, but there wasn't like a specific question. But 0 to 100, focus on that, and then use growth tools.
Hey, I just got one question. Can I ask?
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler. Firstly, thank you for replying to my email there. One question I actually had was, I've been reading a lot about newsletter acquisitions, right? So do you think it's like a good mindset when people start off saying, okay, if I start off my B2B business, or I can, create this into a newsletter, set up for an acquisition? Do you think is that like a good mindset, because you already come from an acquisition, you grew it to an acquisition, and there are a lot of acquisitions that already happened, Milk Road, The Hustle, and so on. So that was my question.
Specifically, building a newsletter for the purpose of acquisition is the
Correct.
question. Yeah, I think it's interesting to view newsletters as an asset that is like fairly novel in the past few years. I think there's like the big ones of like a Business Insider, Axios, The Hustle, like large enterprise acquisitions. But I think as people understand the value of email, there's like a wave of like, that is also going back to the obvious question of like why people are willing to pay for emails. Like it is not like property, but it feels like it's a direct relationship with someone that you can contact and communicate in the future. And to Eldon's point, can take platform to platform. And if you do, or if you are able to convert a certain percentage of people to buy a product, to push them on a premium subscription to sell ads, like there is value in emails. So we have been fortunate enough to see like dozens of acquisitions happen on the beehiiv platform, just from newsletters growing and getting to a point where they are seen and viewed as a positive asset for another business, another content creator. I don't think it's the wrong strategy. I don't know if I dump a ton of money with the hope that there will be an eventual acquisition, because I think as our dashboards and database and analytics get better, like it's very easy to tell what is like a quality engaged audience and what is kind of trash. And we are like very cutting edge with like the analytics that we provide and like the thoroughness. So there's no way to like bull rush and like Morning Brew took 5 years, right? There's like a lot of effort in building like a really quality product. And then the other kicker is not just the email asset itself, but like, can you generate revenue? And that means that ads and brands want to sponsor your newsletter and that you can convert your readers. So I know we're over time, but yes, acquisitions are growing more popular, but I don't know if like I would build a newsletter for an acquisition. I think you should build a newsletter because you can provide value to your target audience and generate revenue if you're going for revenue, or if you're going for influence or whatever else. Like there's value to be able to contact and communicate to an audience of people outside of just pure revenue.
Awesome. Well, I think we're at time, so we're going to wrap up. Does everyone want to plug something real quick? I will just do creatorlogic.com. I interview creators about how they run their businesses. Boye?
Futureparty.com or at Boye on IG. We talk about the business of culture.
Eldon?
Twitter, Eldon Mirz, ELDENMIRZ. I might be dropping more kind of creator tips and tricks, so feel free to connect with me there and chat more.
Tyler? Big Desk Energy and beehiiv.
Let's do it for him.
Nice. Someone muted me, wouldn't let me unmute. I already said Big Desk Energy a lot, but dank_tweets on Twitter is probably where I'm most active and share updates about beehiiv, newsletters, creator economy, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us, Creators Guild, and thank you, beehiiv.